Hey guys, this is John Callan from Kuhol Motorsport. This is a different type of video from the usual because we are making a series of videos documenting our 1NZ-FE swap into a Corolla E100 chassis. So we decided to document the swap because the information is a bit thin on this particular swap into this particular chassis. Thanks to an enthusiast group called Grupo Toyota, which is one of the big Toyota enthusiast groups here in the Philippines. Without the inputs of several members in the Facebook group that they have, this swap would be a bit harder than it should be. So mad props to the Grupo Toyota guys, the Grupo Toyota family. Thank you so much for the advice and information. Okay, again, this is a series of videos. We have an outline of what we're going to document. But for this chapter, we're going to discuss chassis and engine selection. Let's first establish the limitations of the study. It's like I'm back in college doing my thesis. But I think it's also important for our international viewers to understand where we are coming from and what is our basis, and of course what are the limits to what we can discuss for this video. Okay, we're gonna discuss models available in the Philippines only. The AE101 or E100 chassis comes in so many variants from across the world, especially in Japan. There's so many weird JDM exclusive models like the Sprinter, and in Europe they have the 3-door hatch. And anyway, we don't have those locally, so we're just gonna focus on what we have. So we call the E100 chassis Corolla, we call it the big body here. So it's gonna be specific only to the big body models available here. We're also gonna be discussing market trends that are rooted here in the Philippines only. So example, the availability of the chassis, the availability of the engine, availability of the ancillary parts is gonna be based on our personal experience and based on the territory we are located in. As third limitation, we had no choice on the E100 shell we used. So the shell came with a roll cage, and that's what we decided to use. Given that this is a commission build, this is not a build that has an unlimited budget. You could really go as cheap or as expensive as you want with your own build. And this could be done maybe cheaper, probably, by others. But we try to be very budget conscious on this aspect. So maybe there are better ways of doing it, and maybe you guys can improve on what we're going to show you guys on the series of episodes. Alright, so why swap the 1NZ engine? We have determined and highlighted some details on our previous video on our project budget meals race car build. We'll show it somewhere on top of the screen right now. But why the 1NZ? Let's run through it very quickly. It's cheap. That's the basic reason why it's an appealing swap. Because if you want to swap to this engine, it's cheap to acquire. Number two, it's light. Again, we talked about it in the previous video, but to compare it to the 4A-FE, it is about 50 to 60 kilos lighter than the 4A-FE powertrain. Number three, it's fuel efficient. So if that was a consideration, the 1NZ is pretty well built as an economy engine. Of course, it's light also, so that helps on the fuel consumption. For the fourth point, surplus engines and spare parts are readily available. The Toyota Vios is one of the most popular cars here in the Philippines. So spare parts are very, very, very common. We can get it anywhere at the nearest auto supply store. no problem. And surplus engines are readily available, especially the 2NZs. If you are hankering for just pure economy, the 2NZ is very plentiful and very cheap as a surplus engine, the Japan surplus ones. And also you can get X-Tax units, part outs. 2NZ is more common. This engine has competition parts available. We'll discuss what particular competition parts is desirable on probably the later video. This is very good when you're building a race car. And finally, the 1NZ has more power than the 2NZ. So that's why we're picking the 1NZ. 200cc more displacement means a lot. Getting the highest stock horsepower variant would be always the best. Okay, picking the E100 chassis. Based on our analysis and based on what we have done so far with the swap, practically any E100 or big body chassis will do with any engine or transmission option that is available with them. You can get a GLI, you can get an XEXL. Of course, you get the GLI. I mean, that would be the higher spec or the top of the line probably. It will have all the creature comforts, power windows, and all that jazz. So, if you are building it as a daily driver, maybe you go for the higher spec. But if you just want a race car, what we're doing is a race car, so it really doesn't matter. You can get it running with any configuration. The major consideration as far as just getting the car running is concerned is whether you have a carbureted or an EFI version. But it's actually not relevant because you still have to do some conversion to the fuel tank or add an additional tank where you could put in the fuel module of the 1NZ, because the 1NZ, the NZ series, even the earlier ones and the later ones, they feature a returnless fuel system and none of them come carbureted. Even putting an EFI Toyota Bigbody tank will not help you because the fuel module will not fit in the Bigbody tank. So you have to figure out some way. So we'll probably discuss that on a future chapter or a future episode. Okay, so what transmission should you have your Bigbody? It's up to you also. If you go automatic, I don't know how an automatic transmission would bolt on to the Bigbody chassis as the manual transmission. Maybe you just need to get the engine supports or transmission supports for a Corolla Bigbody automatic. However, I do not know that for a fact. We have done a manual transmission installation on our chassis. But it's not easy to find a 1NZ with a manual trans. Of course, they came with manual transmissions in Japan, and definitely they have come with manual transmissions here, but automatics are more common. However, if you go with a manual transmission, any Toyota C-Series manual transmissions can be mounted to the 1NZ if you have the appropriate bell housing, the 1NZ or the 2NZ bell housing, because the manual transmission of the 1NZs are also C-Series. You can select an appropriate transmission if you really want to maximize the package for motorsport applications. We have friends who have installed their 1NZ cars with a C160 6-speed. So that's gonna be the best transmission option, especially if it has an LSD. You can also go with the C52 and C56 transmissions because they have a very nice long first gear. Alright, so 1NZ or 2NZ? Again, we raised up the point that the 2NZ is cheaper to buy, and since it's only a 1.3 liter, it's more fuel efficient. The 1NZ is more powerful, but it's not that much expensive. So, if you can just spring for the little additional money it requires, just go for the 1NZ. But the 2NZ, again, is more plentiful. So, you can also consider that if you're really a fuel miser. Alright, there are many evolutions of the 1NZ engine. We have heard that there are differences in head and block castings, but If you're buying a whole unit, it doesn't matter. You're just gonna buy the whole head and block assembly. Don't care what's inside. But based on our research, there are two major generations, but I'm sure there are a lot more detail that we cannot highlight to you, and it will be up to your research. But on our estimation, there are two generations. One, what we would call the early engine. This is very much differentiated by its cable type throttle body. Early engines would probably have a single O2 sensor. They won't have any EGR or exhaust gas recirculation, and there will be no immobilizer, or the tendency is to have no immobilizer, but that is market dependent. I know in Europe immobilizers are very prevalent, maybe in America, but you have to be very much aware on the presence or absence of the immobilizer that will hamper your car starting. In the Philippines, I don't think we have a lot of VOSs that has an immobilizer. The later engine features electronic throttle body. So the throttle body is controlled by the ECU. There is no mechanical link between the throttle body and the gas pedal. It has a dual oxygen sensor system, meaning to say it will have a catalytic converter stuck right close to the engine, and then there will be a O2 sensor there, and then after the cat there will be another O2 sensor. The later engines are, from my understanding, have exhaust gas recirculation for better emissions, and again, you might have to be aware if it has a immobilizer or not. There are other fine details of this engine. Again, I'm saying that we do not know every single minutiae about this, but I think you could be guided with this metric. So which 1NZ should you pick? The older ones, the ones with the cable type throttle body are an easier swap. However, they tend to have more mileage because they are older. The newer ones, there are more wiring complications, but they're newer. Again, we're in the Philippines, so we have two choices: either getting an engine plucked from a Japanese unit, a Japanese car, and imported here, or we just get an engine from a local car. Usually, the available ones locally, the engines available locally, are from ex-taxis or accident cars. So, Pinoy Surplus, the only advantage it would have is, you can definitely be assured that you can easily buy those parts. But if it's Japan source, you might have differences in maybe the AC compressor or the ECU or what. That might be a challenge when you start replacing parts. So what did we decide to pick? This is our actual engine that we bought from Banawe. I did not know where it came from, and they could not tell us also where it came from, but we checked the ECU part number and it matches that it came from a Toyota Porte. I don't know what a Toyota Porte was prior to buying this engine, but apparently it's this car. It looks to me like a great looking city car, very spacious. It actually looks better than the EcoVerso that we have here. Actually, this car has a sliding door on the opposite side for ease of access. So it's an interesting city car, only sold in Japan. It's the first generation Toyota Porte. It came with the cable type throttle body. So again, it's a slightly easier swap. We don't have to change gas pedals. We can just retain the standard big body pedal assembly. It came with an automatic transmission, but we did not buy it. We left it behind. So we only got the engine, the accessories, the wiring harness, the ECU. Yeah, so that's the engine we decide. We'll probably show you the car on the next episode. And we hope to see you guys, and hopefully you'll be interested to be kept abreast with the progress of our Corolla Bigbody budget meals race car. But until the next episode, guys, I I'm wishing you guys your safety, health, and wellness. Please keep safe. God bless. Take care. And see you guys next time.